And then, by the end of the day, you won't be craving due to the many different stimuli. I often recommend this to couples, so morning sex would solve a lot of things. And usually, men react positively while women react negatively. This is because most women do not feel the sexual desire in the morning that men naturally feel due to morning erections. However, I still strongly recommend everyone to consider morning sex, even if it might be shorter, not a long session, because perhaps there's a rush, but morning sex will still be pleasant, even if the couples do not reach orgasm. At least something happens that bonds the couple, keeps them together, through which the woman feels like a woman and the man feels like a man. Okay, so you don't have to aim for peak performance, but something should happen in the mornings. I have also observed in sexual therapy with my clients that when they talk about why they are not living a sexual life, everyone describes what their day is like. And when I say everyone, I truly mean it's a 100% representative sample. I've never had a client who talked about the weekend on their own. Everyone always described their weekdays. And then I wait for them to say how their schedule changes on the weekend compared to weekdays, but somehow they never seem to get to that point. I don't understand why. Why is there no weekend in a couple's relationship? Why is there no weekend in a family? How is it that they only ever report to me about weekdays? This question should actually be answered by you who are listening to this. Because every single time I had to ask, okay, I understand that in the morning there's a rush. The child has to be taken to school. You get home at 6 p.m. One is tired. The other is still working on house chores. And then dinner, bathing, and by the time everyone is in bed, you're exhausted. But what about the weekend? And then there's usually a little pause. So they are surprised by the question. I've noticed. But really, the weekend is not part of people's thinking. For me, it's also good if a couple has a sexual life on the weekend. So from the perspective of sexual therapy, that's also very good. Meaning it's not necessary to squeeze it into weekdays, as it really seems quite stressful, especially when there are small children who can't be easily placed somewhere, and it's not easy to manage alongside them. The early morning or evening lovemaking. But somehow, let's remember that there's the weekend when the situation is a bit different. For example, in the case of small children, there's usually this afternoon quiet time, which they are already accustomed to from kindergarten. Okay, not every child likes it, but most of them learn and get used to it after a while. So this afternoon quiet time can be calmly introduced into the time spent together at home, and then during the quiet rest, the couple can even make love. So I just suddenly gave an example of when they tell me that they don't make love because there's no time, no place, no circumstances, even because of the children. Children are often mentioned as a common reason. Then I can suggest things like this. Because it's obviously not that easy if I say, stay awake, even after the children have fallen asleep. Of course, I could say this. I've never said it to anyone. But I could even say that once upon a time, you were young too. And you used to go partying. And you went out at night. Most parties don't even start until 11 p.m. So let's say around 11:30 or midnight, the party actually begins. And you had to stay awake until then. Were you able to manage that? Then manage it at home too. Because think about being young again. And in order to do something, you have to stay awake. This could have easily happened, even back when you were living with your parents. And let's say you didn't want to bring it home. Or it wasn't possible. They didn't allow you to bring anyone home. Then you managed it at a party or around the party venue or somewhere on the way home. In the forest, I don't know, in a car, anywhere. So, you can really make love in many, many places, at many different times. It just requires ingenuity and openness and planning at the beginning. Many people don't like this, like, oh, planning sex, how is that? And why not spontaneous? It can be spontaneous if all the conditions are truly right. But as soon as complicating factors come into play, a little planning is needed, but there's no need to be afraid of that. At least at the beginning. And openness is especially necessary. But I return to what I suggested at the beginning, that in the morning it's easiest, even by waking up a little earlier. Or, if you agree in advance that one of you finds waking up more difficult, but is still up for morning lovemaking, then the other will take the lead. And it's not a problem if the passive partner is still half asleep. So this can also be interesting. Making love while the other is still half asleep, but you discussed it beforehand. And it's based on mutual agreement and understanding, not on the basis that one is completely asleep. And then the other initiates sexual contact. Despite this, because this slightly borders on consensual non-consent, which we don't want. Okay, so do what you discussed beforehand and what leaves both of you with good feelings afterward. No. A little bit more about this. I approached the topic of alienation from a mental perspective, but I can also phrase it differently as a lack of energy. And now this is a bit of an esoteric, spiritual angle. In esotericism and natural medicine, the term energy is commonly used. Yes. There are certain colors that help a person recharge with energy, and there are others that calm them down too much. Well, homes are generally designed in such a way that the bedroom has calming and soothing colors, while the areas where we spend the day, like the living room or lounge, are more vibrant. If you've noticed for a while that nothing much is happening in the bedroom where, let's say, the walls are, for example, green, light blue, or perhaps have no color, then it might be worth trying something in the orange, yellow, or even etc. living area. This can also help. It helps if the bed is not, according to feng shui, at least red or pink in color. It can help if you sit on pillows of such colors. But if you sit on pillows of such colors, but these are really more like esoteric solutions. And they are not appealing to everyone, nor are they believable for many people. So let's continue a bit further on this topic, which is definitely worth considering quite seriously, is to make some changes in the diet and include spices and foods that enhance sexual desire. And it's also worth introducing something in the area of physical exercise that generates sexual desire. It's not hard to figure out. You need to move the lower body one way or another. So I'm primarily thinking of movements that don't even require leaving home at all, which activates this area involving the sexual apparatus, meaning the pelvis, gluteal muscles, the area around the penis, and the area around the vulva. Okay, so squats, leg swings, and so on. These help to fill this area with blood. These were essentially superficial pieces of advice, if we consider it. Obviously, for a couple's sexual life to improve, a much deeper analysis and personalized advice are needed. So, a serious sex therapy doesn't consist of just this. To avoid any misunderstanding, it involves much more than this. One thing is certain, it's not healthy if a couple doesn't desire each other sexually. Living together as siblings or friends is not ideal. It might be that neither of you has any sexual desire for the other anymore, and that's why you don't miss sex, because you feel that it's not just your partner you don't desire, but that sex in general has been thrown out and flushed down the toilet, and that's why this relationship is functional. And it can be like this. You can drag it out for 6 to 8 or however many years. I know I've had clients like this who reached out to me after 6 years of a sexless life. But what happens if your partner's sexual self becomes activated and they meet someone for whom they will feel sexual desire again, and they cheat or even leave you because of it? This is always in the cards. Even if you think that you will never be interested in sex again, there are relationships without sex where this is a forced situation. For example, due to one partner's illness or one partner's lack of interest. And the partner, who is the reason for the lack of sex, usually doesn't consider how much their husband or wife misses it. They think, well, we've been doing it this way for a while, and since I don't miss it, neither do they. It's interesting how rarely partners put themselves in the other's shoes. And they usually assume that what is true for them is also true for the other. But that's not the case. It's not like that at all. They often think this way because the partner who is experiencing the lack doesn't complain. This is another topic, why couples are unable to communicate honestly about their needs and lacks with each other, but the point is that very often they don't complain. But you who are listening to this podcast and find yourself in a similar situation, remember that your partner does indeed miss sex. You might not miss it because you're currently ill, but your partner does. And doesn't say anything, doesn't complain. They are considerate of you. You are the focus, but they still miss it. There are many relationships where women use menstruation and the pre- and post-menstrual phases as an excuse to avoid having sex. And they do this because, in reality, sex with their partner isn't that good. Additionally, many women experience discharge, vaginal inflammation, bladder issues, a lot of urinary tract infections, colds, yeast infections, etc. And all of these are good excuses. Even if someone doesn't have a chronic illness, these recurring conditions can be used as temporary, acute excuses for why I don't want to get into bed with my husband again. If you notice that you have these kinds of issues, too often then there might be sexual avoidance behind it, quite likely. Only very few people think of this, and it's not certain that the gynecologist will mention it. In fact, it's almost certain that they won't mention that this is definitely a possibility. Okay, so it's worth considering why you are generating a recurring illness for yourself or even a long-lasting one. Instead of honestly telling your partner that the sex isn't good with you, I don't enjoy it, let's go to a sexologist and fix this whole thing, okay, while we can, and while I'm interested and open to it. Because we still have 10, 20, 30, 40 years ahead of us. Who knows how old you are? And I don't want to live like this, where the sex isn't good with you. And because of this, I end up making myself sick all the time. Okay, so this is also needed. Sex is the glue that deepens the feelings between couples. Attachment, intimacy, togetherness, unity, harmony. These are most experienced when one is having intercourse with the other. And if this doesn't happen, then there isn't that deep, lost in each other feeling. There isn't such deep devotion, dissolution. So, such a relationship cannot be called equal in any way, where this is missing. Equal isn't the right word. I'm looking for the right word now. But equal, so such a relationship is not equivalent to those relationships where there is sex. So this is an inferior relationship. It's a sick relationship. It's a damaged relationship. It's a relationship that needs to be fixed, restored. And I understand that you love each other very much and that you see each other as friends and kiss, kiss, darling, sweetheart, etc. But meanwhile, if you are not willing to connect each other's bodies, then let's admit that the love between you is skewed. Yes, it is skewed. This is a deviation. And not towards normality, but towards friendship, towards being roommates, etc. In such cases, a drastic intervention is often needed. I actually often recommend drastic intervention to couples. Obviously, I don't start with this, but sometimes nothing else helps. only something that eliminates this feeling of my friend, my spouse. So it's certain that something needs to be done here because this isn't good. And if it's the case that on an emotional level as well, you are no longer connected to each other, then there's really nothing to talk about. There are times when a relationship has simply ended completely. The alienation, the cooling off, it manifests at the heart level as well, and not just at the level of the sexual organs, but that's another story. I started today's podcast about starting from the thought that the relationship can still be saved. There is still heart, there is still love, there is still a very strong commitment. I still like the other's appearance. I still want to feel like a man or a woman next to them. I still wouldn't let go. They are not completely my friend yet, just say 95%, so the relationship can still be saved. And as long as it can still be saved, intervention is necessary.